You want to know how it started? It started with silence. Beautiful, perfect silence. For the first time in years, I could hear myself think. I could hear the ocean outside my window, the wind through the trees I'd planted myself, the sound of my own breathing without someone telling me I was doing it wrong. I had built this sanctuary with my own hands, my own money, my own sweat. Every tile, every paint stroke, every carefully chosen piece of furniture was mine. Mine. Do you understand what that word means when you've spent decades having everything questioned, criticized, diminished? When every achievement was met with, well, that's nice, but when every moment of joy was poisoned with comparison to some impossible standard? I thought I was free. I thought the war was over. I thought wrong. The phone rang at 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I was looking at the clock, savoring my morning coffee, planning my day around absolutely nothing but my own desires. The caller ID said Beverly, my mother-in-law, the woman who had spent 23 years making it clear that I would never be good enough, thin enough, successful enough, anything enough for her precious family. We'll be there in the morning, she said. No hello, no how are you, just ownership. Pure, naked ownership. Marcus said it's family property. Family property. Family property. Let me tell you something about family property. It's what entitled people call things that belong to other people when they want to steal them. It's what narcissists say when they can't bear to see you happy without them controlling every breath you take. I hung up that phone and felt something die inside me. Not hope. I'd killed hope years ago. Not love. That had been murdered, slowly, systematically, with 1,000 tiny cuts. What died was the last foolish part of me that believed they might leave me alone. That believed peace was possible. That believed I could build something beautiful and keep it safe from their poisonous hands. But you know what was born in that moment? Rage. Pure, crystalline rage. The kind that doesn't scream or throw things or make scenes. The kind that plans. The kind that remembers everything. The kind that wins. Let me take you back to who I used to be, because you need to understand the depth of what they stole from me before I could steal it back. I was the woman who worked 60-hour weeks and came home to cook dinner. I was the woman who planned every holiday, bought every gift, remembered every birthday, and still got lectured about not being present enough for the family. I was the woman who built a career from nothing, while they sat in their inherited wealth and told me I was too focused on money. Too focused on money. Do you know what it's like to hear that from people who never worked a day for anything they owned? Who lived off trust funds and investments their great-grandfathers made? Who looked at my 12-hour days and called it obsession, while they spent their afternoons at country clubs? I remember the exact moment I realized what I was dealing with. We were at their annual charity gala, one of those events where rich people pay to feel good about themselves while changing absolutely nothing. I had just closed the biggest deal of my career. 8 months of negotiations, millions in revenue. I was exhausted but proud. So proud. Beverly introduced me to her friends like this. This is Marcus's wife. She works in, what is it again? Something with computers? She's always at the office, poor thing. I keep telling her that real women build homes, not careers. Real women build homes. As if the home I'd bought and renovated meant nothing because I'd used my own money instead of marrying into it. As if the meals I cooked every night after working all day weren't real enough. As if my contributions to their precious family foundation, my money keeping their legacy alive, somehow didn't count because I'd earned it instead of inherited it. But I smiled. God help me, I smiled. I laughed along with their jokes about my little career. I pretended not to hear when they called me the outsider at family dinners. I swallowed every insult, every dismissal, every casual cruelty, because I thought that's what family meant. I thought love required sacrifice. I was so stupid, so beautifully, tragically stupid. The worst part wasn't the big moments. It was the 1,000 tiny cuts. The way Beverly would rearrange my furniture when she visited, claiming she was helping. The way she'd criticize my cooking while eating 3 servings. The way she'd tell people I was difficult for having opinions, cold for setting boundaries, selfish for wanting time alone with my own husband. She rewrote reality wherever she went. In her version of events, I was the villain, the gold digger who trapped her son, the career woman who cared more about money than family, the outsider who could never truly belong. She told this story so often, so convincingly, that even I started to believe parts of it. But every smile I forced taught me something valuable. Every insult I absorbed made me stronger. Every moment of disrespect was another brick in the wall I was building, not around my heart but around my future. I was learning. I was planning. I was preparing for the day when I would finally say no. The day I walked away from that life, the sky was the exact color of freedom, clear, endless blue that stretched beyond every horizon I'd ever allowed myself to imagine. I didn't make a scene. I didn't throw dishes or scream accusations or demand apologies I would never receive. I simply stopped. I stopped going to their dinners. I stopped taking their calls. I stopped pretending their opinions mattered. I stopped being the version of myself they had demanded for so many years. My resignation letter was 2 sentences long. I am leaving to pursue other opportunities. My last day is today. 23 years of marriage reduced to corporate politeness, because that's all the dignity they had left me with. But here's what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, because they had never bothered to actually see me. I had been preparing for this moment for years. Every dollar I earned, every contact I made, every skill I developed had been leading to this. While they saw a woman growing cold and distant, I was becoming powerful. The beach house wasn't just a purchase, it was a declaration of independence. Every signature on those papers was me signing my own freedom. Every dollar that came from my account was a vote for my future. They thought they owned me because I had loved them. They learned too late that love doesn't mean ownership, and ownership doesn't mean love. I remember standing in my new living room, boxes scattered around me like the remnants of my old life, watching the sun set over water that belonged to no one and everyone. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of possibility, full of peace, full of me. For 6 months, I lived like this. I woke up when my body was ready. I ate what I wanted. I worked on projects that mattered to me. I spoke to people who respected me. I built a life that fit my actual shape, instead of trying to squeeze myself into their narrow mold. Some people might call it selfish. I call it survival. But you can't escape a family of narcissists by simply leaving. Oh no, that would be too easy. See, the thing about people who think they own you is that they can't tolerate your independence. Your happiness without them is an insult to their existence. Your peace is a threat to their chaos. So they come for you. They always come for you. The call came at the 6-month mark, like they had been watching a timer. Like they had given me just enough time to get comfortable before they reminded me that in their minds, I was still their property. "We'll be there in the morning." Marcus said it's family property. Family property. Let me explain something about the Drexler family and their relationship with property. They believe that anything good in your life actually belongs to them. Your success? You couldn't have achieved it without their support. Your happiness? You learned how to be happy from being part of their family. Your possessions? Well, if you're family, then everything you own is really shared family property, isn't it? This is how entitled people think. This is how they justify taking everything while giving nothing. This is how they sleep at night after destroying everyone around them. But Beverly had made one crucial mistake. She had assumed I was still the same broken woman who had smiled through her abuse for 23 years. She thought I was still someone who could be bullied, manipulated, gaslit into submission. She thought my silence meant weakness instead of strategy. She had no idea who she was dealing with now. I hung up that phone and felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Excitement. Not fear, not dread, not that sick feeling of impending doom I used to get when they called. Excitement. Because finally, They had overplayed their hand. They had given me exactly what I needed to destroy them. You see, leaving them had taught me something crucial about myself. I wasn't the victim in this story anymore. I was the author. And authors get to choose how their stories end. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was worried, but because my mind was racing with possibilities. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, my coffee, and 23 years of accumulated rage, and I started to plan. The first thing I discovered made my blood run cold. Someone had tried to use my house as collateral for a loan. My house. The house I had bought with my money, that was in my name, that they had never set foot in. Someone had submitted fake documents claiming partial ownership. The documents were sophisticated, professional. They had my signatures, or very good forgeries of them. They had fake contracts showing that the house purchase was partially funded by family trusts. They had testimony from witnesses who swore they had been present when I allegedly agreed to shared ownership. This wasn't a spontaneous act of entitlement. This was planned, calculated. They had been working on this for months, maybe since the day I left. While I was learning to be happy, they were learning to steal my happiness. But here's what they didn't count on. I kept records. I kept everything. Every bank statement, every email, every text message, every receipt. You don't survive in business without documentation, and you don't escape from narcissists without evidence. I had proof of every dollar that went into that house. I had recordings of every conversation, legal in my state, thank God. I had witnesses to their threats, their harassment, their attempts to control me. I had built an unassailable case without even trying, simply by being the kind of person who keeps receipts. They thought they were dealing with a victim. They were actually dealing with a prosecutor. The next few days were a masterclass in precision. I didn't rage. I didn't panic. I didn't do any of the things the old me would have done. Instead, I assembled my team like a general preparing for war. My lawyer, Sarah, was a woman who understood what it meant to be underestimated. She looked at my evidence with the kind of smile that makes opposing counsel very nervous. "This isn't just theft," she said. "This is fraud. Federal fraud. They could go to prison for this." Prison. The word hung in the air like a promise. My real estate agent, the one who had helped me buy the house, was horrified when I showed him the fake documents. "I've been in this business for 30 years, he said. "I've never seen anything this brazen. We have everything documented. They can't possibly think this will work." But they did think it would work. That's the thing about entitled people. They're so used to getting away with things that they stop being careful. They stop covering their tracks. They start believing their own lies. My tech consultant, a brilliant woman who had escaped her own toxic family, helped me set up security cameras, recording devices, and digital documentation systems. "When they show up," she said, let them incriminate themselves. The truth has a way of exposing itself when you give it the right stage." The right stage. That phrase stuck with me, because that's exactly what I was building, a stage where the truth could finally perform. They arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, because of course they did. Entitled people are always punctual when they're coming to take what's yours. I watched from my security cameras as the convoy pulled up. 3 cars, a moving truck, professional movers. Beverly in the lead car, already barking orders before she was fully out of the vehicle. She had brought an audience, her sister, her daughter-in-law, 2 family friends. She wasn't just coming to steal my house. She was coming to humiliate me in front of witnesses. She wanted to make this a public demonstration of who had the real power in this family. Perfect. I had always preferred an audience for my victories. I watched her march up to my front door like she owned the place. Watched her pull out a key that couldn't possibly work because I had changed all the locks. Watched her face turn red with rage when the door didn't open. Then came the screaming. 23 years of dealing with Beverly had taught me her patterns, but this was beyond anything I had ever witnessed. She wasn't just angry, she was feral. She was a wild animal whose prey had escaped and she couldn't understand how. "Open this door!" she shrieked. This is family property. I have rights. Rights. She had rights to my home, rights to my peace, rights to everything I had built and earned and paid for. In her mind, loving her son had signed away my autonomy forever. She called the police. Of course she did. In her version of reality, I was the criminal here. I was stealing from her. I was preventing her from accessing what was rightfully hers. The officers who responded were professional, patient. They looked at her fake documents. They looked at my real ones. They looked at the bank records, the purchase agreements, the chain of title. "Ma'am," one of them said to Beverly, "this property belongs to her. You have no legal claim here." Legal claim? Beverly's voice could probably be heard 3 blocks away. "I'm his mother. She's nobody. She's a gold-digging whore who trapped my son." And there it was, 23 years of polite cruelty finally exposed in its raw, ugly truth. All the pretense stripped away, all the careful social masks torn off. This was who she really was when she thought no one important was watching. But everyone was watching. The neighbors had come out. People were recording with their phones. The movers were standing around looking uncomfortable. Her own sister was backing away, embarrassed by the display. "Ma'am, you need to leave," the officer said. "If you don't leave voluntarily, we'll have to arrest you for trespassing." "Arrest me? I'm Beverly Drexler. Do you know who I am?" "Yes, officer. We all know who she is now." I let her scream for exactly 37 minutes before I opened my door. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted every second of her meltdown documented. I wanted the world to see what I had been dealing with. I wanted witnesses to the real Beverly Drexler. When I finally stepped outside, the immediate silence was profound. She had been expecting cowering, crying, begging. She got calm. She got dignity. She got someone who looked like they had never been more in control of their own life. "Beverly," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the yard, "you're trespassing." "Trespassing?" She was so angry she was actually spitting. "This is family property." "No," I said, pulling out my phone and scrolling to the documents I had ready. "This is my property, purchased by me, with my money, in my name. Here's the deed. Here's the title. Here's the bank records showing every payment came from my personal account. Those are fake." "Are they? Officer, would you like to call the bank and verify? I have the account numbers right here." The officer made the call. 2 minutes later, everything was confirmed. My house, my money, my legal ownership. Beverly's face went through several colors as her reality crumbled. "You can't do this to family," she whispered, and for a moment she almost sounded human. Almost sounded like someone who genuinely believed she had been wronged. "I'm not doing anything to family," I said. "I'm protecting myself from thieves." That's when she lunged at me. I'm not kidding. This 68-year-old woman, dressed in her designer outfit and her pearls, launched herself at me like a rabid animal. The officers grabbed her before she could reach me, but the intent was clear. The threat was real, and it was all on camera. "You're going to regret this," she snarled as they handcuffed her. "I'll destroy you. I'll take everything. I'll make sure you never work in this town again." Threats. Direct, unambiguous threats made in front of police officers and recorded by multiple witnesses. Beverly wasn't just stealing from me anymore. She was threatening me. She was making this personal in ways that would have legal consequences. "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent," the officer began. But Beverly Drexler had never remained silent about anything in her life. Why start now? The arraignment was a circus. Beverly had hired expensive lawyers, of course. The kind of lawyers who specialize in making rich people's problems disappear. But there's a limit to what even expensive lawyers can do when their client has been caught red-handed committing federal fraud on camera while making threats to the victim. The evidence was overwhelming. The fake documents with forged signatures, the attempted use of my property as collateral, the trespassing incident, the assault attempt, the threats made in front of witnesses. But what really sealed Beverly's fate was her own mouth. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, she couldn't help herself. "Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding. That woman is not really family. She trapped my son into marriage and has been stealing from our family for years. That house should belong to us. She has no right to keep us away from what's ours." Even her own lawyers were cringing. You could see them desperately trying to shut her up. But Beverly Drexler had spent 68 years believing that her version of reality was the only one that mattered. She genuinely could not understand why everyone wasn't nodding along with her logic. "Ma'am," the judge said, "do you understand that you are currently charged with fraud and theft?" "Yes, and it's ridiculous. She's the thief." "Ma'am, please lower your voice." "I will not lower my voice. This is America. I have rights." The judge set bail at $500,000. Beverly's face went white. Her lawyers were frantically whispering in her ear. Her family members in the gallery were staring at their phones, probably already calculating how to distance themselves from the scandal. But I wasn't done. Oh no. This was just the opening act. You see, Beverly had made one fatal mistake in all of this. She had assumed that I wanted to hide what she had done to me. She thought I would be embarrassed by the public exposure of our family drama. She thought I would want to settle quietly, take my house back, and disappear into anonymity. She was so very wrong. I wanted everyone to know. I wanted the whole world to see exactly who Beverly Drexler really was when the masks came off. I wanted her friends, her social circle, her precious charity committees to understand what kind of person they had been enabling all these years. So I called the newspapers. I called the local news stations. I posted on social media. I made sure that everyone who had ever been impressed by Beverly's wealth and status knew exactly how she had tried to steal from her own daughter-in-law. The story went viral within hours. Beverly Hills socialite arrested for property fraud. Entitled mother-in-law tries to steal daughter-in-law's home. Watch this woman lose her mind when she can't steal someone's house. The videos from my security cameras were everywhere. Beverly screaming about her rights while trying to break into my home. Beverly lunging at me in front of police officers. Beverly ranting in court about how I wasn't really family. The internet is a beautiful thing when it's on your side. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion about Beverly Drexler. Everyone had a story about entitled in-laws or toxic family members. Everyone was sharing their own experiences with people who thought love meant ownership. Beverly became a meme. The image of her, mouth open in a scream, finger pointing accusingly, became the universal symbol of entitled outrage. People made TikToks using her court audio. Twitter was full of jokes about family property. But for me, this wasn't about internet fame or viral videos. This was about something much deeper. This was about 23 years of silence finally finding its voice. The trial was scheduled for 3 months later, but Beverly's team was desperate to settle. They knew they couldn't win. The evidence was too strong, the video footage too damning, the public opinion too firmly against them. But I refused every settlement offer. I didn't want their money. I didn't want their apologies. I wanted justice. I wanted Beverly to face the consequences of her actions for once in her privileged life. The media attention had brought other victims forward, women who had been treated like property by their in-laws, people who had been financially abused by family members, individuals who had been gaslit and manipulated by narcissists who used family as a weapon. Beverly wasn't just fighting a fraud case anymore. She was fighting a reckoning. She was facing the accumulated anger of everyone who had ever been told to keep the peace while being systematically destroyed. The prosecution built their case methodically. They showed the pattern of financial manipulation. They demonstrated how Beverly had used emotional blackmail and family pressure to control people for decades. They brought in expert witnesses who explained the psychology of financial abuse. Beverly's defense was exactly what you would expect. She was the real victim here. I was the manipulator. I had seduced her son and stolen from her family. She was just trying to protect what was rightfully theirs. But you can't gaslight a courtroom full of evidence. You can't manipulate facts or threaten documentation into compliance. You can't scream your way out of federal fraud charges. When the guilty verdict came down, Beverly collapsed. Actually collapsed. The woman who had spent her life controlling everyone around her couldn't control her own legs when faced with consequences. 18 months in federal prison, $2.3 million in fines and restitution, 5 years of probation, a felony record that would follow her for the rest of her life. Justice isn't always satisfying. Sometimes it's just necessary. But even that wasn't the end. Even prison couldn't stop Beverly from trying to control the narrative, trying to maintain her power, trying to convince everyone that she was the wronged party here. She wrote letters from prison. Long, rambling letters that started with apologies and quickly devolved into accusations. Letters that blamed me for destroying the family. Letters that insisted she had only been trying to help. Letters that painted her as a misunderstood matriarch, whose only crime was loving too much. I read exactly one of those letters. It was enough. "You have poisoned my son against me," she wrote. "You have turned our family into strangers. You have stolen not just property but relationships, traditions, love itself. I hope you're happy with the destruction you've caused." The destruction I had caused. Even facing the consequences of her own actions, she couldn't accept responsibility. Even behind bars, she was still trying to rewrite reality. Even powerless, she was still trying to make me the villain in her story. But here's what Beverly never understood. I didn't destroy anything. I simply stopped building my life around accommodating her destruction of me. The family did fall apart after her conviction. Her son, my ex-husband, chose to stand by his mother. He visited her in prison. He maintained her innocence. He told anyone who would listen that I had trapped his family in some elaborate scheme. Her daughter stopped speaking to me entirely, as if I had somehow forced her mother to commit fraud. Her sister wrote me an email explaining that while Beverly's methods were unfortunate, I should have handled this privately to preserve family unity. Family unity. The phrase that had been used to silence me for 23 years. The weapon they wielded whenever someone questioned Beverly's behavior. The excuse they gave for enabling a woman who treated love like a real estate transaction. But I had learned something valuable in all of this. Sometimes the family falls apart because it was never really a family to begin with. Sometimes destruction is just the clearing away of lies to make room for truth. The house is quiet again now. Different quiet than before, though. Before, it was the quiet of hiding. Now, it's the quiet of peace. I wake up every morning to the sound of waves, just like I did before Beverly's call. But now I know something I didn't know then. This peace is not fragile. It's not something that can be taken from me by someone else's delusions of ownership. It's something I built, something I earned, something I protected. Beverly got out of prison 8 months ago. I know because she sent me another letter. Not an apology this time, but a statement of her intentions to rebuild the family relationships that were damaged by misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. 23 years of abuse and a federal fraud conviction reduced to misunderstandings. I didn't respond to that letter. I didn't respond to the phone calls from flying monkeys trying to broker some kind of reconciliation. I didn't respond to the social media messages from distant relatives explaining how much it would mean to the family if I would just move past this. Moving past this, as if federal fraud was a minor social faux pas that should be forgotten in the interest of holiday dinners. But I've learned something about forgiveness that nobody talks about. Forgiveness doesn't require access. You can forgive someone and still refuse to let them back into your life. You can release your anger without opening your door. You can choose peace without choosing them. People ask me sometimes if I regret how far I took things. If I think 18 months in prison was too harsh for a woman Beverly's age. If I feel guilty about the family relationships that were destroyed. The answer is no. No regret. No guilt. No second thoughts. Beverly didn't go to prison because she was old or because I was vindictive. She went to prison because she committed federal fraud. She went to prison because she tried to steal my home. She went to prison because she thought her entitlement was more important than my rights. She went to prison because in a world that constantly tells women to be smaller, quieter, more accommodating. I chose to be larger, louder, and completely uncompromising when someone tried to steal from me. The family relationships that were destroyed were relationships built on my silence about abuse. They were relationships that required me to pretend Beverly's behavior was acceptable. They were relationships that only worked when I was willing to be the victim. I'm not willing to be the victim anymore. 6 months ago, I got a new call. Not from Beverly this time, but from a woman named Sarah whose mother-in-law was trying to steal her business. Sarah had seen my story online and wanted to know if I had any advice. Document everything, I told her. Keep records. Set boundaries. Don't try to reason with people who think love means ownership. And when they finally cross the line that forces you to act, don't hesitate. But what about family unity? She asked. What about keeping the peace? Whose peace? I asked her back. Peace for who? The person being abused or the person doing the abusing? That conversation led to another and another. I started getting calls from women all over the country who were dealing with financial abuse from family members. Women who were being told to be the bigger person while someone systematically destroyed their lives. Women who were being gaslit into believing that protecting themselves was somehow selfish. I started speaking at conferences about financial abuse in families. I wrote articles about recognizing manipulation tactics. I testified before legislative committees about the need for stronger protections against financial exploitation. I had found my purpose in the wreckage of my old life. I had turned my pain into power, my trauma into truth-telling, my survival into service. Beverly tried to steal my house. Instead, she gave me a mission. The beach house is worth more now than when I bought it. Not just because of market appreciation, but because of what it represents. It's not just a house anymore. It's a symbol. A reminder that you can leave toxic people behind and build something beautiful. A testament to the fact that peace is possible, but only when you're willing to fight for it. I've added security cameras, of course, motion sensors, reinforced locks, not because I'm afraid, but because I'm careful. There's a difference between paranoia and preparation, and I've learned the value of both. The cameras have never caught Beverly trying to return. She knows better now. She knows that I'm not the same woman who smiled through her abuse for 23 years. She knows that I'm someone who keeps receipts, builds cases, and follows through on consequences. But they have caught other things. They've caught deer in my garden. They've caught sunrise over the ocean. They've caught me dancing in my kitchen while making dinner for one. They've caught joy in its purest form, uncompromised, uncontrolled, unashamed. Last week, I got a letter that made me cry. Not from Beverly this time, but from a woman named Maria, whose story was almost identical to mine. She had left her abusive in-laws, built a new life, and successfully defended herself when they tried to steal her business. You showed me that standing up for myself wasn't selfish, she wrote. You showed me that protecting my peace wasn't cruel. You showed me that some families need to be left behind so that real love can grow. Real love. That phrase stuck with me for days, because that's what this whole story is really about, isn't it? It's about the difference between real love and toxic control. It's about understanding that people who truly love you don't try to steal from you. They don't try to manipulate you. They don't try to punish you for being happy without them. Real love celebrates your independence. Real love respects your boundaries. Real love doesn't require you to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. It took me 47 years to learn that lesson. It took federal fraud charges to enforce it. But now I know, deep in my bones, what love actually looks like. It looks like a quiet house by the ocean where nobody screams at you for existing. It looks like bank accounts that belong only to you. It looks like doors that open and close at your discretion. It looks like peace that nobody can steal, because you've built it on foundations they can't touch. The sun is setting now as I finish telling you this story. The same ocean that was here when Beverly made her threatening phone call. The same ocean that will be here long after all of us are gone. There's something comforting about that continuity. That reminder that some things are bigger than human drama. Beverly is somewhere out there. Probably still telling people that she's the victim in this story. Probably still believing that she had the right to take what was mine. Probably still waiting for me to come to my senses and apologize for defending myself. She'll be waiting a long time. Because I've learned something that toxic people never understand. You can't steal someone's peace if they've built it on truth. You can't manipulate someone who keeps records. You can't gaslight someone who trusts their own memory more than your version of events. Beverly tried to teach me that I was powerless. Instead, she taught me exactly how powerful I really am. She tried to steal my home. Instead, she gave me my freedom. She tried to destroy my peace. Instead, she showed me how to build something that can't be taken. Some lessons are worth the pain of learning them. Some victories are worth the cost of winning them. Some stories are worth the telling, even when they hurt. This is my story. This is how I took everything back. This is how I learned that sometimes the only way to keep your peace is to be willing to go to war for it. The waves keep rolling in, steady and eternal. The house stays quiet, secure, mine, and I stay here, at peace with the choices I made and the price I paid for freedom. Beverly Drexler tried to steal my house. She never stood a chance.